Hey, welcome back to me. I still screwed something up. 1 second. Something's not quite working properly here. Let me try to fix that really quickly. There we go. There we go. Yeah, so if you notice down here at the bottom over here, I can't right there. I actually have like a bottom thing for like an animated thing to go across there with some of the high level things. Um, I'd like to do that as well. I don't consider myself a professional news streamer. Sorry about that hiccup. I don't know why it stopped streaming, but my OBS stopped streaming on me. Sorry about that. Um, no, OBS stopped streaming. I'm not sure why. I don't have a button to stop streaming. I have to actually click it. So I'm not entirely sure why that happened. So sorry about that. Something happened also, and the capture card died as well in that time. So I'm not sure what happened. So yeah, I'd like to get that just for the news section. Although I'm not a just news person, like I don't stream every day about the news of stuff that's going on. I don't know if people like that. Maybe I can do it more, but yeah. So, anyways, as I was saying before I killed the stream, thousands of image on Docker Hub leak the secret and private keys. And what a lot of people don't understand is the layers, and how basically even if you delete something in a layer, it doesn't actually mean that it's gone or can't be retrieved. And so you have to be really careful about these layers. Inadvertently exposing secrets. The study assembled a mass data set of layers. See, they talk about these layers instead of the images, because each image has multiple layers. And you can actually pull those layers apart, is what happens. So anyways, I think this is something, I mean, this is pulling my attention to it, that it's a bigger problem. I thought more people knew and understood this, and, obviously not. And so I think I need to make a fun video on this topic, to help spread understanding. And, in that we can actually pull apart a file as well, and do something. All right. On top of that, 40 there. This is like the second major flaw. So actually, earlier in the year, there was one where their 40 proxies actually had to be like returned because it was a hardware key. So this is remote code execution on their 40 proxies and 40 OS, which has firewalls and things. So if you're using 40, make sure that you're not part of this. Microsoft had a very bad week. Um, yes, Russell. Yes, that is what they're doing. 100%. That is what they're doing. They are building. They are building layers, and in one of the first layers, they'll like include a key and like compile it into their app or something that they feel is secure. Or they'll use like a key to access some code somewhere in a layer, and compile that key. But then they'll like not use it in later layers or remove the key in later layers. But the fact is they added it in the first place. And so what happens is then they are you can go and get those keys. Let's see. Dutch says developers shouldn't push company code to their own public repos. I'm not sure what you mean by to their own public repos. Oh, you're saying like to an internal repository, yeah. So basically, and I didn't realize this was a big deal, and people didn't realize it. But what this is going on to say is people don't realize that those layers exist. They think that the end layer, the end result, is the only thing that exists. And so they'll use, your API secret key or something in a layer, and then they'll remove it in another layer, and they think that they've actually removed it, when you can go and pull all the layers from Docker Hub. So anyways, like I said, I'll make a video on this because I didn't realize people didn't realize that. And I also agree that like there needs to be a team that's working on this, but the fact of the matter is there's not always a team available to work on issues like this. So these things do slip by, and that's where my YouTube channel is going to come in. Hopefully we can educate people on this. Oh, if I push company code, it should go to company's internal Docker registry versus my Docker Hub account, since DevSec has no insight onto what gets pushed into the web. 100%, it's on the companies to know where those things are getting pushed. Yeah, absolutely. But agree, and again, this is where like I try to do my part, is because not all companies have security teams or things like this, and so like I can sit on a high horse and be like, oh, this is how it should be. Your security, your DevSecOps, your whatever should do X, Y, or Z. But in the end, that's not all companies, and you don't have so the more I can help educate people on stuff like those keys will still exist in those layers, hopefully the more secure the internet can be. But yes. All right. Microsoft had a pretty bad week. Now, just like the keys will still exist on Git. Actually, that's absolutely a perfect example, and I'm going to use that in my video if you don't mind, Dutch. Even if you remove the commit, like if you make another commit in GitHub to remove the key still exists in history. So that doesn't fix the problem. I think that's a fantastic example that a lot of developers are going to relate with. So if you're okay with that, I will use that as an example in my video. I like it a lot. All right, so Microsoft is still unsure. As the last I could find, they were still unsure how their Azure AD signing keys were stolen. So there was a big thing about the Azure AD signing keys, because this allowed a lot of big companies to get hacked, as well as the State Department and another United States government department got hacked, leaked data via these Azure AD signing keys. I think almost bad enough for Azure to decide to rename its service. If you think that I'm lying, Microsoft is rebranding Active Directory to Microsoft. Anyways, it got hacked so bad that they're just this is a bad timing on renaming. I don't actually think they're renaming based off of that, but it did come right after they have basically admitted that they don't know how those security, which is probably the worst thing. Everybody's going to get hacked, as we'll find out. Charles Schwab announced a TD Ameritrade data breach. As I always say, you're going to get hacked. That's why the layers of security are so important, because the fact is, if somebody like Charles Schwab and Microsoft can get hacked, they're probably better than you are, unless if you're like Cloudflare. And even Cloudflare had the incidents with their video cameras, and this is why zero trust layers of security very important. So TD Ameritrade is actually just the last in a long line of banks that were. This is now if these people had been watching, I on the day of talked about the Move It server compromise and bug and how bad it was. And if these banks had been listening to me, they might have spared themselves. But they keep falling to the exact same bug. Okay, so not only did they suffer from their sign-in keys, Microsoft, but Microsoft also has what's being called the in-auth or no-auth Active Directory vulnerability, which is actually a combination of two different vulnerabilities to effectively be able to take over Active Directories and for your organization. So if you are using, I'm going to actually put this, because this is something you can actually help with. I'm going to put this in chat for you all. If you guys are using Active Directory, I think you should take a look at CloudStrike's blog post here. They do a very good job of how it happens and how to mitigate its effects. I did not find a fix to it yet. So Microsoft hasn't released a direct fix that I have found. Not saying it doesn't exist out there. My 10 minutes of Googling on it didn't raise a fix to it. So hopefully they will get that fixed shortly. Another thing that was kind of interesting, and the last topic for today is, I'm a huge fan of two-factor authentication, and I'm a huge fan of these little two-factor authentication devices, and we can talk about the difference between an application like Authy on your device versus a physical device like this, but Google Authenticator, which is one of the apps that you can have on your phone, has some new security concerns that I think people should be aware of. As I push for people to do these things to be more secure in their lives, I do try to also keep you abreast of the problems with some of these things. Now, it came out that Google Authenticator app actually doesn't use encryption for the one-time code. If you've used an Authenticator app, I'm sure that you've seen where you'll scan a QR code. That QR code actually has a one-time secret in it. And the big deal here is the Google Authenticator app doesn't actually encrypt that one-time secret. So basically, if a hacker was able to get that one-time secret, they would be able to access your keys for that. So it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. Hopefully this is going to get fixed. This article goes on to whether organizations should use it or not. I'm going to say that it's still more secure because my goodness, words are difficult, but that QR code that is originally generated, it's only generated the one time for you, and thus there's not, unless if the hacker is right there getting that QR code with you. But that does raise the concern, if you're doing a QR code in a public area, you really can't be. You can't be signing up for those if you're using the Google Authenticator app. So, that was it for me on security. Did anybody else see anything else in the security area this week? Remember, I always encourage everybody to bring their own stuff. If I missed stuff, if I didn't see stuff, there's a lot going on. It's very easy for me to miss stuff. I work a full-time job and do this stuff, so I could miss stuff, but I try. Let's talk about the latest thing to take the internet by storm. Okay, I'm actually always weary of QR codes too, and I especially don't like physical QR codes. And I've been meaning, so we've talked about maybe I'll start another YouTube channel with demystifying the tech. That's going to try to help non-tech people with some of this tech stuff. And QR codes are on the top of that list. And one of the reasons QR codes is, I have seen it so many times, and this annoys me, where I was in Silicon Valley and a waiter brought me a menu, and it said please order, and then it had a sticker with a QR code, and it said, please order on this sticker. And I was like, no, I'm not going to scan that. I was like, anybody could put a sticker on this menu with please order here. And how do I even know that the money where I'm putting my credit card in that is secure in any way? There is no way to know that that's a valid sticker, except for the waitress then getting on to me and saying, no, that was the only way to pay. And then I pretty much just walked out because I wasn't going to pay that way. I don't like physical QR codes. Yeah, Dutch, 100%. I won't eat at those places, and I let them know. I think it's a security mistake. It's pretty crazy. Now, the ones where it's like, these I'm a little bit more lenient with, but the ones where it's like on Discord, it can be like, hey, to sign in here on Discord, scan this one. That's Discord giving you that QR code, and you know that because of HTTPS and other things. So I'm less weary about those than I am physical ones that people leave on picnic tables or on business cards or on just stickers that are put on things. Those are the ones I'm much more worried. It is a thing that exploded during COVID, but yeah, it's just very unsafe. Very unsafe. All right. Let's talk about. Well, did anybody else have anything else on security? Okay. If nothing else, let's talk about Red Hat. Red Hat, I know we usually jump right into the cloud, but this is probably the breaking news segment. And I make you listen through security because security is good for you. But Red Hat, as we talked about last week, decided to make their sources closed. And we have a couple different ways that this is being handled. So Rocky Linux said, that's okay, we're going to mine. Basically, they're mining the Red Hat source from the different things that they can access. I think I'm a little weary of this not from a legal standpoint, because legally they're not clicking on anything that says they won't redistribute. So I think they're fine there. But my big worry here is that Red Hat's going to close those loopholes. I don't think it's a viable way forward. But we have another contender that's called Alma Linux. And they're actually taking a different approach that is actually the same to Oracle. So Oracle makes their Unbreakable Linux. I'm not sure that many people use it, but there's an Unbreakable Linux that Oracle releases, which is also a derivative of Red Hat. Now, both Alma Linux and Rocky, this isn't quite true of Unbreakable Linux, but Alma Linux and Rocky shot for what they call bug-to-bug compatibility. Basically, they were source compatible in every way, including the bugs, with Red Hat Linux. And Rocky is pushing to continue to maintain that, and Alma's taking a little bit of a different way, but this caused a bunch of different things in the community to happen. First, this week, I saw that SUSE is preserving choice in Enterprise Linux by forking RHEL with a $10 million investment to maintain a fork of RHEL that is ABI compatible. So basically, application compatible with RHEL. So they're not shooting for bug compatibility with this version of RHEL. They are shooting that if your application works on, I'm going to call it SUSE RHEL, which is a little weird. I don't know, Red Hat's gone green. Not sure what we're going to call this version yet. But on the green version of RHEL, they're trying to promise application compatibility. So if your application would run and targets RHEL, it should run and target green RHEL. This is the same approach that Alma Linux is also taking. Alma Linux isn't going to be a bug for compatible distribution anymore. Alma Linux is taking we plan on being basically compatible, application compatible with RHEL. So this is basically the same stance Alma Linux is taking. You can read about it here. I will give these to you guys if you like. That's the Alma Linux one. We'll also put the SUSE Linux one. Now, something that this doesn't state here, but I guess that SUSE and Oracle are combining in and pitching into this, so I don't know if SUSE is going to just contribute to Unbreakable Linux or whatnot, but they're combining forces, which I thought it would be very weird to have Oracle stepping in, but Oracle very much is. And this is kind of interesting because just a couple months ago, Oracle and Red Hat announced a lot of partnerships to bring Red Hat to Oracle's cloud. So I don't know, and Oracle is calling them out for not playing nice. So I'm interested to see how that also pans out. So there's, I guess that's really it. I thought I was going to spend more time on this. I'm going to send these links to you guys as well. This is how Rocky Linux is currently mining the source code. So what is their selling point now? You know what? This is, I actually, if we're talking about this, I don't know why SUSE is doing this, to be honest. Now, I am going to clarify, I used to work for SUSE, and I've never worked under the new CEO. I've actually heard from some of my colleagues that are there, or they're not colleagues anymore, but some of the people that I've worked with that are there, I've heard good things so far about the new CEO. I'm not sure what the move for forking RHEL is. If it was me, I would do the canonical thing. And Ubuntu to enact new marketing strategy. Stay quiet and watch Red Hat implode. So to me, I personally would probably have taken this strategy. I don't have to do anything if my competitors blow themselves up. Again, I'm sorry if I was not clear, Dutch. They are not maintaining one-for-one bug compatibility. They are maintaining application compatibility. That's what they're promising. So SUSE, Unbreakable Linux, and Alma are all taking the your application compatible approach. This another random distro is going to be compatible with your application, not bug compatible. Rocky Linux is the only one that is trying to stay the bug for bug compatible, basically binary compatible with a Red Hat. I apologize if I didn't state that clearly. I was trying to say that there was actually two approaches that people were taking. Red Hat or Rocky Linux is taking the one approach. We're going to maintain our bug for bug compatibility, and Alma and SUSE are taking the we're going to make a Linux that is compatible if your application runs on Red Hat. I don't know how like I said, I don't know the reason behind this, because if I was them, I think I would be doing this one, or not even being quiet, but like being like, guess what? Guess who still has fully open source source? One of us do. Like I feel like you could jump on that instead of and like give $10 million to your core developer team, because the core team at SUSE is much smaller than the core team at Red Hat. So I think like you could literally say, hey, look, we're doing this for a open source code. Even the long game, they need to wait for them to get to the point of wanting to pay and then convert them over to SUSE. Yeah, like I said, I don't know the long game. I'm reporting the news, not motives here. Yeah. My guess, because this is a lot of what SUSE does, is they'll sell support for their Red Hat distribution. They're not going to try to get them over to SUSE. From my experience working there, the thing is that I see them doing is, hey, we have this. We have a whole arm of people supporting this, and you can pay us for support. You have a problem with it in production, we're there. We have our guarantees of how fast. That would be my understanding of how SUSE thinks they'll monetize it. That's how SUSE and Ubuntu do the most of their monetization. Not all of it, but that's the big way that they monetize, both of them. Dutch said something about OpenShift. I think OpenShift is probably one of their bigger monetary things. Yeah. I think the play they think they have is we're going to get Red Hat users that want to stay open source and hopefully migrate to SUSE. I don't know if they think migrate to SUSE eventually. Maybe they think, well, this will buy us some stuff and migrate. They'd be happy either way. Sell me support for X Red Hat. Sell support for Red Hat or sell support for SUSE. I don't know. Now that being said, I did find this somewhat. Maintaining 2 code bases is a ton. I honestly, I would love to have an interview with SUSE's CEO. Not that I'll get one, but I'm going to email them, I think, because it's a ton of support. And like I said, Oracle's going in with it on it with them. So we'll have to see, and I'll keep reporting on the news how those types of things are going. I try to keep up with them. You'll put in a good word? Nice, Dutch. Awesome. I would love to know the motivation behind it, because I've read their public announcements, but their public announcements were pretty much, this is what we're doing, not the motive behind it. I mean, they did say that they're doing it to keep open source open, but I mean, like, they can do that with their own code too. So that's not really a great motive. I'm sure that they have another means to it to make money. Now, this was somebody's comedic take on it. Ubuntu to enact new marketing strategy, stay quiet and watch Red Hat implode, which I found pretty funny. But the problem is, Canonical's still in hot water. Canonical's leading LXD engineer quits. Now, we talked about this. Canonical last week took control of, they didn't take control. They always had control of the LXD project. It just resided in the Linux containers area. And they said, no, we want the code here. Now, I don't know the reasoning behind this either. I would love to know the reasoning behind this. I think, honestly, Canonical could get out of more of this hot water by just explaining motives. Because a lot of people saw it as a hostile takeover, when Canonical themselves are the people that developed it. I think, and I don't know the motives behind Canonical, but it could have been something as easy as, this is easier for us to manage from a legal standpoint, our code. There's a bunch of things that could have gone into it. I don't know them because they're not open about those changes. When they made this change, they should have had an AMA that said, hey, look, we're looking at doing this change. We want people to voice their concerns. We want to answer your concerns, and we want to go into our thought process. This is what I think ruins a lot of open source companies, because these companies don't realize that being open source is about having a community, and it's about being open with that community. Because if your code's open, but your decision making isn't, then you just get a lot of confused people that usually get angry. And that's what happened. So they weren't even, I guess, open enough with their own engineers, as one of their leading LXD developers have left. So now, he did write a blog that I think is pretty good to read. This is just his opinion. So, I don't have any inside knowledge on it. You're more than welcome to read his opinion on it. He did say things about Ubuntu and Canonical as a whole, as he says it has shifted in culture, and he just doesn't like it as much. So he is going to remain a core developer, though. So yeah. Did you guys see anything else? The argument against it being more work for Canonical is that the lead person at Canonical on LXD quit. So that sounds like it wasn't a problem for him. Yes, like I said, I don't know all of their motives. I wasn't meaning to defend Canonical either. I was saying that there could have been valid reasons from either a management or a legal perspective, or another reason that we don't know 100%. And that's the problem. When the company leaves us to make up what the reason is the problem. If you would just come out and be completely open with us, then I think it would be a lot easier. I think you're 100% right, Russell. Even if there's not another reason, it can feel like it. And I think that's the key to running a better open source community. Now, not everybody's going to like your reasoning, and that's that. That's what you get. Are we ready for the cloud news? Does anybody else have anything else to add to this? I would call them like the major 4 open source OS distros debacle. I don't know what to call it yet. I'm gonna call it the open source OS wars. Almost choked on my coffee. All right, let's move on to the cloud. Now, something that I have gotten increasingly excited for, and then increasingly depressed by, and then increasingly excited for, and then increasingly depressed by, is the idea of development experience and development environments as code or as a shareable thing. This concept of, hey, look, I can give you an entire working Kubeflow deployment as a redeployable thing wherever you want to go is really exciting, because a lot of those environments are hard to set up and are fraught with peril. Now, one of the biggest things that I've seen fail about this is a lot of developers are nuanced. Some like to work on Mac OS. Some like to work in Linux. Some like i3, some like GNOME, some like Windows. There we go. I couldn't think of another one. "100% Russell. You can't please everyone ever. No point in trying. Just be honest, move forward as best as you can." That's 100% my view as well. Be clear with why you're doing it. Tell everybody your true motives, and then they don't have to guess. You just told them. Now, if you disagree with those motives, that's fine. That's another thing. Move on. But yeah, you're never going to please everybody. I think it's the fact that people they don't tell them. They just make these things. Anyways, let's talk about... Oh, man. I wish Twitch paid me more for those ads. I mean, I put them off as much as I can, and then, well, they are, they force me to. And, I mean, they want to get paid. They let me have this platform, so that's fantastic, so I have no problem with them getting paid. They're not getting paid much, though. I can tell you that much. I think it's like a 50-50 split. They're not getting paid much from me. So, all right. So we are talking now about development experience. Now, I think the problem with all of these is every developer I've ever worked with is different, and they like different things, whether it's Vim, VS Code, Visual Studio, the Complete Edition, to Goland or, JetBrains level software. They're all different, but I've been watching. So Loft Labs has announced the new open source project DevPod for development environments as code on any infrastructure. So I'm kind of excited about this because, like I said, I get excited and then I always kind of. But dev environments as code for on any infrastructure sounds like there could be some variables in there, like what's your favorite code editor? Which one do you want to have set up? Do you like Golang? Do you like Visual Studio Code? Do you like NeoVim? Nobody likes Vim anymore. Nobody wants to learn their own programming, special programming language just to make a plugin. So I'm excited about this, but there's actually two companies really pushing for this. So Loft Labs is a new one that I've seen. I'm going to post this link there for you all in case you want to see it, which you can see there. I haven't used it. I don't know how well it works, but it's interesting. Then Microsoft itself also has their dev-optimized cloud-based workstations. Again, I have tried these. I am not. Oh, excuse me. I am not nearly as excited about these as I am about Loft Labs, but it is a thing. It is a thing. What are your guys' opinions on them? The thing that I like about Loft Labs is it allows you to run it on any infrastructure, which means my home infrastructure is too. I'm actually really excited to dig into it because I'm hoping it can run on a local machine as well, which would super empower a lot of people. Because if you could run it locally just the same as you would in a cloud, this is starting to get super powerful. But we'll see. We'll see. Other than that, the only other news was that Microsoft rebrands Active Directory. We can talk about their auto scaling of stream analytics jobs, which is nice to have auto scaling, but not the biggest deal. This is maybe the other Azure thing out there that I saw interesting was the Azure dedicated host resize, which now basically allows you to resize your dedicated hosts. So basically you can move from a type 1 to a type 4. So if you want to, scale vertically, and this minimizes the impact of scaling vertically. And sometimes you have an app that needs to scale vertically or scales easier vertically. So that's nice. It's a nice touch. Again, DevBox is now generally available, so you got an SLA out there for that. We got some new burstable generations VMs. Burstable VMs are pretty much the worst. I feel that all these tools, yes. That's a fantastic observation by Dutch. All of these tools are complete buy-in and hard to pivot out of. That's a problem with any tool. Honestly, how much do you want to buy into one of those types of things? I've never been a Vagrant fan. I do VMs, but I've never actually been a Vagrant fan, mainly because it's restrictions on VMs that you can use, because basically I have to make it where I can't run KVM to run VirtualBox, to run Vagrant, which I don't like at all. So I've never used Vagrant a whole lot, but that's interesting that you use that. The last thing is Azure AD is now becoming Microsoft Entra ID. Okay, very real talk here. I worked at a company that had access to a bunch of highly regulated data. And in that company, every single developer's machine, your local machine, couldn't have any of the data, any of it. And so to do our jobs, we actually had to be in their data center. So I think this would really scale. This type of Loft Labs, this type of thing right here would be super powerful in that type of environment when you're in highly, highly regulated stuff that has to maintain Like there were required, we couldn't have anything on our local machines, period. I think this would be super useful then. Yep. You did all your you did all of your development through a VPN on your colo machines. Yep, that's what we would have to do. 100%. Cool. So that was it for Microsoft. Let's talk GCP just a little bit. Mainly because of the storage code. This is actually something that I don't think a lot of people know. Is they always are like, oh, Mac's Unix compatible, or something like that, and they think that it's like one for one Linux compatible, and it's just not. Like Docker Desktop. Docker Desktop runs a virtual machine that is Linux and runs the containers in there. I think it's something that people like. It seems really close, but it's not. It's not quite. And so like there's definitely things that leverage the base underlying OS. Like storage providers are a classic that just won't work. Just won't work. All right. GCP, join optimizations with BigQuery primary keys and foreign keys. Basically, they made BigQuery a little bit more performant, which should actually save you some money because they do charge you in your time for queries. So it should actually save it. This is almost a price reduction, but it also does more than just that. You get your data, your results back sooner, so it speeds some stuff up. So that's nice to see. You're now able to configure private origin authentication, which is really nice if you're trying to give private URL access to a customer or something like that, which is a fairly nice thing to do. And you're now able to configure cleanup policies for artifacts stored in their artifact registry. So if you're getting gigabytes or terabytes of images and you want to have a cleanup policy, you now can. Now it's in pre-GA, so I warn you, you might not want to use it right now in production, but it's something you can start setting up. Wait till it's wait till you've used it for a little while, know its quirks, and you might be able to save a little bit of money using up a nice cleanup policy. This is really nice that they have this that's just built in with a UI to configure. Everybody here knows how to make their own thing to clean up these things, but that's just another system you have to make, run, manage, maintain. Having it done for you seems pretty nice. And that was it for the cloud. Literally, there was nothing interesting from AWS. I looked through the things that they released. It was all like, hey, this machine is now available in a new region and things like that. Really nothing that I'd like to report on. All right, there was two things from the CNCF that I thought were newsworthy. And that is all around the Istio. So the Cloud Native Computing Foundation reaffirms Istio maturity with project graduation. So Istio has been through some rocky ups and downs. They have focused a lot on making it simpler to use. Yeah, it's graduated. So if you're looking for a top-notch everything thing, because Istio does quite a bit, you can now look for let's be real. There's Istio and there's one other project. And I forgot its name right off the top of my head. I was just gonna say that you could go and use that. My goodness, why I can't bring that up. But Istio did graduate, so this is nice to see. It means that it's a little bit better. A Linkerd Linkerd. That's what I was gonna say. Thank you. If you're looking for a top-notch service mesh, go check out Linkerd. Otherwise, Istio has. Now, graduation brings a lot of stuff in the CNCF. So if you're looking at graduation and asking what does that mean, it means that it had a security review. It means that it had a comprehensive code quality review. It means that it has comprehensive unit and end-to-end tests. It means a lot of these things that are required for a project to reach maturity. So I do think it's actually a big deal, even though the project for the last year hasn't changed a whole lot. It's been going through those security and things like security reviews and things like that that are done from an outside auditing. So I do think that this has some pretty important things to it from a consumer's perspective. Thanks, Russell. We're going to review that. I'm going to finish the CNCF and then we'll jump into that. I missed it. So yeah. This is good news, especially if you use Istio. The other thing is KubeVirt version 1 has landed. So KubeVirt has been around for a while. I didn't even realize that KubeVirt version 1 wasn't released, but it's been released. This doesn't mean that it's graduated through all the stages. This just means that the developers of KubeVirt think that they have a stable release. So if you're looking for something like KubeVirt, it's now, per the developers, production ready. Now, if you're wondering what KubeVirt is a thing that allows you to run VMs inside of Kubernetes. It's an operator that gives you. It's not really an operator. It's kind of. I won't get into how KubeVirt works, but KubeVirt gives you the ability. Let's see. KubeVirt extends the Kubernetes API and adds CRDs. Thus, operator. You get those custom resources that enables you to run VMs natively inside of Kubernetes. So basically, some people that are looking for a little bit higher security than containers can look at running in QEMU and libvirt. Now, I haven't seen BottleRocket support in KubeVirt, not natively at least. I have seen some people that get them to work together. But yeah, anyways. Yeah. So yeah, that is the CNCF news that I thought was interesting. Now we have some more cloud news that was brought to us by our very own Russell, so we're going to cover that. Thank you very much for bringing that up, and we're going to look over that right now. So it turns out that AWS head of data centers joins Google Cloud as Google's. I'm not going to pronounce their name because I'll probably not do it correctly. So I guess Google's own head is stepping back, and AWS, the person in charge of AWS Cloud Center, left AWS and moved to Google. Okay, so Google Cloud's shaking up its management staff with a man in charge of Amazon Web Services, global data center fleet, joining to lead the search giant's cloud supply chain and operations. Employee number 8. Wow, that is a big shakeup. The interesting thing about this will have to do if there's a change in how they make their data centers, like how they configure them. I'm not super aware of, I know that GCP's data centers are slightly smaller than Azure data centers because they found that there's like a point. I read a paper that GCP released. There's a point where scaling them larger didn't actually it actually added costs, not reduced costs. I agree. I think Google is way behind. GCP, I think, is the worst cloud to use, honestly. It's the worst cloud to use. And I know a lot of developers disagree with me because they'll point at GCP and they say, hey, it's kind of developer first. And that's great. But I don't go to a cloud because of their developer practices. I go to a cloud because I want a stable thing to use. And the fact is, service architecture is something that Google is really bad at. Google does microservices where they break stuff up into insanely small pieces and deploy stuff. But a service architecture is something they don't know how to do very well, and it's kind of ingrained in them. I think that they're actually pretty bad at it, which building something as a service is all about doing a service architecture where every team provides something that another team can consume through an API and things like that. I think that's like one of the biggest things that Google's getting held back from. I don't think every single time I use their cloud, it doesn't strike me as well polished as even Azure or AWS. But yeah. Oh, of the top three, I'm sorry. There are smaller ones like DigitalOcean and Linode, which I think, I think Linode for what it was and what it has done, it's great, but it's a much smaller cloud. Like, I don't think that they're as good as AWS if you're looking for stability or features or, now their UI is way better and maybe their policies are better. I don't know. I'm not talking about those, but yeah. I was talking of the top three, Azure, Google, and AWS. I just think that the other two outclass Google by far in most things. Yeah. I've been wanting to do a comprehensive review of the major clouds and the minor clouds. I feel like I would need a sponsor to do it because I feel like I would rack up a couple $1,000s and spend to do it properly. Because there's a lot of like comparing features like drive speed. I would need to show you that AWS by far has the best drive speed. This is something I know, but I can't just pull up the facts. I need to actually show you. I need to actually run the things to show that their drive speed far eclipses anybody. Azure is dumpster. GCP is unstable. But like I would actually need to collect that data. Now I have it from places I've worked, but I don't have it right now to show you. That's places I've worked data that I can't show you. So I would need money to actually prove those things out and show you why, a place like AWS really has some of those things. Now, there are places in AWS that are hot garbage. Don't even get me started on their authentication and authorization because it is hot garbage and you shouldn't use it. You should use Auth0 or something else because, my goodness, it's the worst. All right. Back on to track. We're kind of at the part where we get into just, well, actually, I say that, but I forgot that we now have our AI section, so we're into the AI section. There's a couple things that happened in the AI section that is interesting that we should talk about. So we're going to jump into those. And you guys will you guys will get me off track. You guys get me off track. It's good though. We're having conversations about these. All right. Meet VLLM, an open source LLM. The LLM is a large language model interface and serving library that accelerates Hugging Face transformers. So if you're looking to get into it, this is actually a pretty good article. I'm gonna put it in here for you all. All right. And let's. So if you're looking at that, but it's not that big of a deal. Now, I did see this, which I thought was interesting. Meta, formerly known as Facebook, I don't know how long people are going to continue saying this. Even I, a person that doesn't use social media, knows that it's called Meta, is set to release a commercial version of Llama, its open source large language model. Now, the weird part here is everybody keeps calling it its open source large language model, but I haven't been able to find it. I've wanted to run Llama ourselves. So for the Null, like our Twitch alerts, I've been wanting to run those Twitch alerts using Llama hosted locally, but I can't find it to do that. But everybody keeps calling it its open source large language model. So if you find it, let me know because I want to start using it. That being said, China released their own OpenAI competitor, which I found interesting. But ChatGPT is getting more competition than just from China's Tencent. They're actually getting some local competition from I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm gonna say Claudia. I believe I'm just wrong. But this is another one. Why are you better than ChatGPT? And this was released by a place called Anthropic. Claude, I was right first time. Sweet. All right, they refuse to make any comparisons and other AI systems. All right. Anyways, I played around with it a little bit last night. It did fairly well. I'm thinking about adding it to I'm gonna actually code with it on stream a little bit this week to see if it should join us for the grand finale of the AI games this Saturday. But we'll see. We'll see if it deserves it or not. But so ChatGPT is getting a little bit more. So there's Google Bard and there's a bunch of different ones coming out. It's actually going to be there's going to be a lot of them out there. And Anthropic is out there with Claude. Yeah, I do want it's supposed to be open source. I just can't find it. Like, I guess the thing is, you could give it the license of open source. I could give it Apache 2, but if I've never published the code anywhere somebody can get, what's the point of it having Apache 2? That's all I found. That link is literally all I found, but everybody keeps saying that it's an open source model, but I'm like, where is it? Where can I go get that? I would love to, because supposedly you can run it with pretty good results on about 4 gigs of memory. Oh, is this it? I don't know. I don't know Dutch. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. This might be it. Yeah, I wanted to do like the 7 or 13 billion because I think I could run that locally. Sweet. Thank you, Dutch. Anyways, we were talking about that, and that actually, I guess that is the end of the stuff I had for machine learning. I didn't see it. Actually, I did see one other interesting one. I'm going to Google it really quickly because I saw this. Now, I actually have met the CEO of this company, to fair warning. And I wanted to know if you guys would like to have an interview with her. And I will ask if she would. So anyways, there is a Terra AI, which is something that's kind of interesting. I'm torn on Terra AI myself. So they just launched their Insights program. And it's something that I feel is interesting and terrifying at the same time. It uses machine learning on your data to basically understand the performance and velocity of your team. So you don't have to do sprints or things like that anymore. Terra AI basically looks through your historical data to help you understand, the larger picture. Now, I think some bad managers could use this in the incorrect way. And so that kind of terrifies me. But I was going to request access. And actually, I was thinking about getting I think I could actually get an interview here if you guys So yeah, Dutch, that's my. So actually, when I was talking with the CEO, those were some of the things that I was asking her specifically because, as a person who manages engineering teams, um, I don't know that I don't know. It kind of sounds scary and cool at the same time. So one of the things that I pressured on her that I would love to see was how to see the effects of upper management. How to see how I think about it, and which I think she actually agreed with, which I actually liked. Um, um, and one of the things that I actually liked what she said was the fact that I expressed that I would actually like to see data on what us management do and the effects on productivity of the people, the people that are actually doing the productive work. So my opinion is that upper management should always be pushing, upper and middle management should be the ones who we see what their choices and decisions and things and how they do, because a really good middle management will make the teams more productive, but it's almost impossible to measure. And that's what I would like to see happen. Again, this is why I think I would like an interview. I'm not sure if you guys would, but I'm interested. I've already talked with her, not in a interviewing type of way, but I think that I might be able to get an interview if you guys would be interested in that. I don't know, because part of me says I'm also terrified because it could be a toxic work environment and performance review tool as well. So anyways. Oh, Russell, another post on AI. Cool, cool, cool. Right, that's what I was thinking was like I actually want so I think to understand management's productivity, you have to understand engineering productivity because you have to understand what I do, is there an effect on the team or not? And to know if there's an effect on the team, you have to measure that. But I think what we need to do is we need to switch how that performance review is done. The performance review really is more of management than it is of the individual engineers. But I think that that doesn't even come down to your data. That comes down to how your management is done, which I think a lot of companies just get wrong. So I don't think having a machine learning on the data, is that interesting. All right, I can only see the headline, but ChatGPT loses users for the first time, shaking faith in the AI revolution. I think this is something that people should have been seeing for a long time. These AIs aren't smart. They don't actually do anything revolutionary. They just kind of mash data together, and they do it. You know what? I will be the first to say that ChatGPT does it in a way that's really amazing. It's really awesome how it does it. But I will also be the first person to say that it's not going to replace a software engineer, because to replace a software engineer, it would have to actually think and need to know what needs to be done, and thus it can't. Now, it might be able to empower you, it might be able to help you, but yeah. Russell says mobile and desktop traffic to ChatGPT's website worldwide fell almost 10% in June from the previous month. I get it. That makes sense. You all have been enlightened. You've been sitting here with me. I'm sorry, that sound. I sometimes sound that super narcissistic. This is the type of stuff we try to cover, though, as a community. So if you're here, you'll know too. I've been skeptical of, and you know how much it costs to keep ChatGPT running? It's like $100 million a month or something like that. It's a ridiculous amount. Let me see if I can't find that really quickly. $700,000 per day. What are your thoughts on GitHub Copilots? Any risk for a license violation, patent infringement? Um, you know what? I don't know that there's risks of. I don't know. I don't know about the legal aspects of it. I think that likely not patent infringement, only because most of the stuff that it was trained on is stuff with that gives access to your patents. So I don't think you have to worry about patent infringement because it was trained on Apache and MIT software. Now, the thing about whether you have to worry about the license agreements of the Apache, like the Apache or MIT, again, they're pretty permissive. So I'm guessing no, especially because in US law, for it to actually infringe, you actually have to use more. So even like I have access to the Unreal game engine code. I am allowed to post up to I think it's 30 or 50 lines of the code, and that's not an open source license. But I am literally allowed to post up. I'd have to read it again, but it's 50 or 30 lines, and you're not infringing on copyright with that. That being said, I don't post any lines of its code because I don't like taking any types of risks, and I don't get into the code that much anymore these days anyhow. So I am not a lawyer. I'm not going to go out here and tell you the risks. My personal feeling on it is if you're making something open source, my personal feeling is that there's very low risk because you're making it open source. So there's really no risk of infringement because even if it was on a GPT or a more restrictive open source license, it's still an open source license and your thing is open source. If you're making a closed source thing, you probably have more you need to give it more thought, and I would say that your legal team really needs to review it. Well, I think honestly, Russell, this is why they only give you short code blocks. They never generate over more than like 10 lines. Why? You really can't infringe that much then, because even US copyright law, you know, if everybody that wrote a book and had every sentence copyrighted, you couldn't speak because it would be a copyrighted sentence. Even this sentence here probably would be copyrightable. And so it's really about full works of art. And then it comes down to, and this is where copyright law, and I'm not trying to lecture you guys on copyright law, but it is about distinctive works of art. Now, you couldn't copy a chapter out of a book either. It's not saying like the whole work, it has to be the whole thing. A chapter is sufficient. But there is and this is where the law gets a little murky. And again, I'm not talking about it. So if you said a small function out of a code, I don't think anybody would be able to legally say, oh, I also have this small function. You owe me a copyright claim. You baited me, Russell. You baited me, Russell. Dang it. You guys kill me. You guys kill me. Tab 9. Freaking tab 9. Wasted $50 of my money. Yeah, I think I don't know, because a lot of humans mimic famous art, and that's legal. You can't say that I made a Van Gogh, but you can say I made a painting that looks like a Van Gogh painting. That's completely legal. You don't copyright the style. So an AI that makes Van Gogh style paintings, I can't see a problem with that. Now, replicating it and selling it as a actual legitimate Van Gogh would be illegal. Well, except that he's been dead for over 70 years. Thank you, Disney. Um, but yes, Merck. I'm not your legal expert here. I'm not your legal expert. My whole thing was, if it's for an open source thing, I would say I don't personally feel any problem. Um, I don't see. What do you mean there isn't much open work to train? There's a lot of open work to train. Copyright only goes to 70 years after the person dies. Right? So, like, there's hundreds and hundreds of years of work. I feel like art there's quite a bit. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Oh, to the current level of digital art? Good point. It's not that much. Good point. I'm I I will politely refrain from getting into whether it's ethical or not, and whether we should have laws for them copying pixel for pixel. That wasn't mine. I was talking about coding ones. And I even tried to specifically state my feelings if I'm making an open source project, which is what I have been doing anytime I've been using a coding thing like Copilot. I'm writing some open source code. Which I then also don't have a moral obligation or I don't feel any ethics problem if it was trained on open source code, because that's how I learned to code, and I would look for those anyways. If I got stumped on a problem, I would go and see how another project did anyways, and I find that Copilot or something like that pretty much just shows me how another project might have solved the problem in the first place. And so that's what I was saying. That's my opinion on if you're going to go with open source. I don't have either an ethic problem or moral problem, or I don't think you'll have a legal problem either. Closed source, I think you should talk to your lawyers. You guys are killing me. You guys are killing. I don't know if you guys are purposefully baiting me, or I do it to myself. Maybe it's a combination. All right. Let's talk about you have ethics either, Russell. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. So one thing that I saw that was interesting is something that Superbase released. So this is kind of the place where we have some general articles. You're an insult to art. I'm also pretty much an insult to artists whenever I do art as well. There's an interesting thing that Superbase came out with, basically PG vector versus quadrant. So if you guys are looking at machine learning, you might be looking at these vector databases thinking, what's the big deal about them? Maybe I'd make a YouTube video on it. I don't know if people are interested, or maybe everybody understands why you might use a vector database. I've been thinking about making like the definitive guide to why you would use X database over Y database and the pitfalls. I don't know if people would like that or if it's just really common. I feel like it's really common knowledge, but are there any use cases that aren't AI? I believe the answer is yes, but I think that they're further behind. I actually think that you could use something like a vector database for a couple other things. One, and this is basically what AI is anyways, so you're going to holler AI, but it's really statistical math. If you're looking at doing a lot of statistical math, I believe that a vector database would be good, which is why it's good for AI as well. So again, I get where that's... Statistical math is a bigger field than just AI. is why I separated out. Genome calculations, right? This is what I'm saying about the math world has a little bit of other ones. I think along those lines, there might be some reasons when you want something like I actually think that a vector database could be really interesting, maybe horrifying. I don't know that anybody's done it, but it could be really interesting for something like a social map. Where you're, think about it like driving. You could store relations really close to things, and you might be able to make some relations that you didn't think of before. Yeah. Kind of like the Facebook graph, like you're linked 7 people to here. Okay, that's also a great option, Dutch, is a VR headset with a high dimension. I think we're going to see more uses of vector databases, honestly. Russell, I don't think that's one of them. I think if you picked everything that I said, that's the least helpful thing, is a vector DP with etcd. I think that was not the option at all. But I agree with you, Mr. Elfman. Bioinformatics, I think we already covered bioinformatics, genomes, but vector databases can be really useful. Anyways, so I think maybe I need to do some videos on vector databases, because I think honestly I could learn a little bit more. I've used them lightly, and yeah. Anyways, so cool article. You guys should go read it. Dutch is getting hard pressed to Googling your sentences. I already talked about Istio graduating. My bad. Introducing passwordless authentication on GitHub.com. So, passwordless is getting to be all the rage. Whether it's super secure or not, we'll have to see. But we all know that passwords are a big problem, and that's what this is trying to. My password manager is I forgot my password. Oh crap. All right, you guys are killing me. I'm gonna try to finish this, and then we can have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Let's loop back. I'm gonna finish what I had for the news. We're gonna loop back to vector databases, and then we're gonna talk about why my next 4 episodes on the Null channel, YouTube channel, are gonna be about vector databases and how they apply to more than machine learning. Because I think everybody understands that that's a thing in their relationships, but maybe we can expand on that so everybody else can understand them a bit better. Nighthound, nice to see you. So GitHub is committed to helping all developers deploy strong account security. Anyways, they're pushing not only for 2-factor authentication, which I think is fantastic for your open source and supply chain needs, but they're also pushing for passkey authentication, which is that passwordless authentication, which I think is pretty awesome. Now, I haven't used passkey authentication just yet. I'm still a little worried about it myself as far as security goes, but I am looking forward to it. Mr. Elfman, I will contend with you that it's not 8 years left, that the NSA has already cracked the RSA and ECC. So I'm just going to contend with you with that. No inside knowledge, but that is my prediction that your RSA and ECC are already vulnerable. So GitHub Merge Queue is now also generally available, which is pretty awesome. People have a problem with pull requests, and that's the merge queue. And basically, when you get two pull requests that are approved at the same time, but there's not necessarily the tests that test both of them together. And now you can do this with a merge queue, and it simplifies larger teams, possibly open source as well. Now, I think there's ways that you can mitigate the effects or needs of a merge queue, but it is something that has been done now, and so you can use it. It's generally available. It's pretty awesome. Mr. Elfman, Snowden showed, I wouldn't say proved, that PGP is still fine, but that was a while ago. Wasn't that? Like I said, I don't have anything that proves the NSA cracked it. I'm also saying that there's nothing that proves that they don't. Guys, getting me into my legal banter. GitHub CLI project command is now generally available. So if you guys haven't used the CLI project, it's a great way to interface with the Google CLI. I actually have been using it but I didn't know that it wasn't generally available at this point. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. Let me give you the merge queue. I'm sorry I don't always post these. There's that one. And then, did you want the password list? The pass key? I'll get you the pass key one. And, my goodness, here it is. The CLI project. Oh, I'm sorry, Dutch. You already did my job. And then I posted all over on top of you. Thank you, Dutch. I appreciate it. Dutch is fast. Dutch is fast. Thank you. And the very last thing, I didn't have an article to review. I do want to ask you guys, I'm asking you sincerely, if you find an article that you would like me to read and go over with you all, please let me know. It's hard for me to do it because part of the whole thing is I haven't read it before we get to this news segment. And then I read it and go over it with you guys. We have a conversation about it, but we're going to do that with vector databases as soon as this is done. The last thing that I wanted to do is say that the Pi Foundation open sourced their code editor. I didn't really realize it wasn't open source. It kind of surprises me that it wasn't, but they did release their web-based code editor that they made for children. Now, it's weird that they made a code editor and then said it's for 7 years and older, which is kind of weird. My kids could type at before the age of 7, but it's for 7 years and older. It's meant to be simple. It's meant to help children get into programming. So they made it open source, and I think that's kind of cool. Yeah. All right. Nighthound, I didn't know you weren't on the safe list. You can't post links. If you want to post a link, please do it in Discord for me. And we'll get into it. Do give me articles because I would love to react to them, but I can't have read them beforehand because then we can't have a honest conversation through it because I've already prepared what I think on it. Do the Cloudflare one. All right, well, then I'll do the practical engineers next week, and we'll do the Cloudflare one this week. Does that sound good? I actually saw this, and I didn't put it in the news because I put it on my save to read later, and so it's cool. The Cloudflare Global Network optimized for system reboots during low traffic periods. Now, I do want to say that looking at this title, I want to say that this is a large enterprise company, and that if you are a team of 5 to 10 people, you shouldn't be optimizing for for system reboots during low traffic periods. Now, what I'm assuming, just reading this title, what I assumed a couple days ago when I saw this, it crossed my feed, What I'm assuming that they're doing here is doing maintenance stuff when they have the system capabilities. So they have their own data centers. And when they have the excess compute power to shut down some of their nodes, and basically what they're optimizing for. Mr. Elfman, I think you've hit the nail on the head that I wouldn't call it over-engineering, but maybe over-engineering if you're a small team. This is the type of engineering you can do when you have a larger team. I found them using sine waves a bit weird. Just look at the data and see it's quiet after 11 p.m. Okay, so let me get into the article and we'll read it. But please bring these articles because I would love to go over them with you guys. I think we have a lot of fun when we're doing it. We'll have to do vector databases another day then because we're doing this now. So no vector databases. We'll do vector databases and the pragmatic, the principal engineer's handbook. The principal engineer's handbook is next week. We'll do vector databases another time. All right, to facilitate the huge scale of Cloudflare's customer base, we maintain data centers which span more than 300 cities in over 100 countries. Okay, yep. Including approximately 30 million... I said 30 million, 30 locations in mainland China. The Cloudflare global network is built to be continuously updated in a zero downtime manner, but some changes may need a server reboot to safely take effect. This is always going to happen. And this is why, so one of the things that we have to do when we're talking about the Null cloud is how we're going to migrate things. You're going to have to reboot servers. And the thing is, you need to actually be able to migrate people's workloads without them knowing that they're changing servers. Now, I know that it's annoying that clouds do this underneath you because there's millisecond time differentiations. I can't say the stupid word right now, but it's annoying that it happens, but it happens because there are these zero downtimes and the base you might have a VM there, but the base machine that VM might need to reboot. And when it does need to reboot, you've got to migrate to a new machine. And for the most part, that happens without you knowing, which is pretty amazing. To enable this, we have mechanisms for the whole fleet to automatically reboot with changes gated on a unique identifier for a reboot cycle. Yep. Each data center has a maintenance window, which is a time period, usually a couple of hours, during which reboots are permitted. How much traffic do smaller companies even get? Cloudflare is a pretty big company. Does AWS do that for 100%? AWS does this for AWS does what I'm talking about, where basically they live migrate you. AWS, GCP, and Azure all do this. So you have an EC2 instance, and it needs to move. They are going to move it. And they're not going to tell you they're going to move it because they have this live migration of the VMs. Now, this can cause problems if you're in if you're possibly a database that promises sub-millisecond responses. This causes problems because sub-milliseconds depends on that not happening in that sub-millisecond. There's also some other weird things that can happen in that. All the cloud providers do it because there's no way to get away from it, because the only other way to get away from it is to say, oh, on Saturday, we're shutting your VM down. You might want to start another one. That's the only way around it. Do TP? No. In general, no. What they do is, there's actually different ways. We can get into how they do it. Azure does it a pretty cool way. Basically, they have nanosecond backups all the way down into the CPU, and they do it really, really fast. So there's a couple hundred nanoseconds blip where that machine might show offline, but so small. Whereas AWS, last time I knew how they did it, was that they actually ran both. They spun up the new VM and they started doing all new traffic over to this one. And as soon as this had finished its last request, they shut it down so that it effectively looked like it never went down. Right. This is why you use replicated story layer in your application. 100% Dutch, 100% this. High availability, just swap the endpoint, 100%. But Anyways, they all do it, is what I'm saying. They do it a little bit different. I don't know how GCP does it. But I do know that they do it. A company that I vicariously know some of the stuff that happens with it definitely actually have problems with GCP. GCP cause instability when they do it. And it's actually a disaster because sometimes machines are offline for seconds, if not minutes, which is pretty terrible. All right, Cloudflare Global Network. Okay, we take our customer experience very seriously, and hence we have several mechanisms to ensure that disruption to customer traffic does not occur. One example is Unimog, our in-house load balancer. I actually did cover this because I kind of wish that they had made this open source, but they didn't. And I get why they didn't make it open source, because it actually takes a lot of work to make something open source, and it sounds like Unimog is really focused on their needs, not anybody else's needs. So it might not even make sense as an open source project. Anyways, ensuring that there's no disruption to our server is taken down for routine maintenance. The SRE team decided to further reduce risk by only allowing reboots in a data center when the customer traffic is at the lowest. We also need to automate the existing manual process for determining the window, eliminating toil. So I guess somebody would decide when that window was. In this post, I feel like this is actually, if they don't say they fed the data to a machine learning algorithm, because I think this is just statistical analysis, which I think is what ML algorithms do best, statistical analysis. So I feel like this is an opportunity for it. But like software on my VM just don't notice anything. Kind of, Mr. Elfman. You heard bad stuff about, GCP isn't the worst, but it's not the best in my opinion. All right, so in this post, we'll discuss how the team improved this manual process and automated the determination of these windows using a trigonometric function. I know how to pronounce this word. I learned this in college. Sinusoidal wave filtering. ADIS. Yes. All right. Thanks to how I think you guys wanted this just to see me mispronounce a lot of English words that I should know. All right. Thanks to our efficient load balancing framework within a data center, technically we could proceed to schedule reboots throughout the day with zero impact to traffic flowing through the data center. However, operationally, the management is simplified by requiring reboots to take place between certain times of day for each data center, which makes sense. It also both acts as a rate limiter to avoid rebooting all servers in our larger data centers in a single day. That makes remediating any unforeseen issue that arise during the reboot. Man, they need to use smaller words for an uneducated American. As issues can be caught within the first batch of reboots. One of the first steps, we actually saw a problem. This was a problem with, what was that service that went down? It was a couple months ago. And the biggest thing was they didn't detect that there was a problem with the first reboots, and they kept going through and rebooting, and it basically took all their servers offline. What was that? Anyways, this is really important that when you do a rolling reboot, that you avoid this problem where you keep rebooting more servers when the first ones don't come back online properly, and that you actually have tests to make sure that these are coming back up properly. Very important. I forget what it was. It was a couple months ago, but I do remember that was the core issue. One of the first steps is to determining the window during which we were going to allow these reboots to take place. Choosing the relative low traffic period of data center makes the most sense for obvious reasons. In the past, these low traffic windows were found manually by humans reviewing historical traffic trends present in our metrics, which makes sense. I feel like this is really easy. I feel like this could simply be done with linear regression. This does seem to be quite wordy. But I feel like this could be like a simple linear regression. It was an SRE. Right. They thanks Russell for making me not feel bad for forgetting who it was, but they were down for like a day and they were just like, yeah, we rebooted them. And the funny thing was they rebooted like 5 at a time, but they didn't validate that the ones came back online properly. And so they just like rolled through all of them and were like, yeah, we rebooted all. Anyways, it was pretty horrifying. This sounds like a horrible job. This job sounds like a horrible job. Traffic trends are always changing, require increasingly frequent review. This is interesting. Traffic trends are always changing. I have found. Okay, so I'm guessing the reason their traffic trends always change. Now, I have found when I've had very large services under my my control is that the traffic trends are fairly stable. I say that they do change. They do change, but they're fairly consistent. So that's but the one thing I would have to say is Cloudflare is always getting new customers, and new customers have their own traffic trends. And so I think that's probably why they're saying they're always changing, is because of that. That would make sense to me as a cloud provider. I've never actually been a cloud provider. I've had an application, and my users usually use the app in consistent times, and they have patterns of behavior. But this would make sense that they would add new customers with new applications that have different traffic patterns. We would move quickly at Cloudflare. There is always a data center in a state of provisioning, making it difficult to keep maintenance windows up to date. The system was inflexible. If you have a person doing it, it's inflexible. And also, if you have a person doing it, it also then would depend from person to person how they were doing it, which is a bad way of doing it in general. You don't have a repeatable way. The responsibility became SRE-torial, and it was repetitive, process-based work that could and should be automated. Absolutely. Time to be more efficient. Here goes our sine waves. We quickly realized we needed to make this process more efficient using automation. An ideal solution would be one that was accurate, easy to maintain, reusable, and could be consumed by other teams. A theoretical solution was fitting, not filtering, on a CPU pattern for the data center over a configurable period, e.g. 2 weeks. This method was a way to transform the pattern into a theoretical sine. I hate this word now. I hate this word. I hate reading it on stream. Sinusoidal wave, as shown in the image below. So this is the sine wave, classic sine wave. This is them fitting a sine wave to the data. It's just like just fitting a line to any amount of data. This is a pretty common. This, like I said, this sounds like machine learning to me, fitting a common line. With a sine wave, the most common troughs can be determined. The periods through those troughs can occur are used as option. I feel like this is over engineering. Just looking at this, like, why did we need to fit this? I'm not sure. You can take your baseline average, this green line, and just say this is the average line, and the times when it's below that average. It's interesting. It's interesting. All right, so the wave theory, the secret sauce. We think math is fun, and we're excited to see how it could help us in practice. To implement the logic and tests, we need to understand the theory. This section details the important bits for anyone that is interested to implement this in their maintenance cycle. Okay, so this was a mean one for you guys to all recommend, because I like to make sure that I sit down and understand this type of math before presenting it. So here we go. I want to use Python to calculus, and it's missing from my CV. All right. We think that math is fun, and we're excited to see how this held up in practice. To implement the logic and test, we need to understand the theory. The section details the most important bits of anybody that's interested in implementing this for their own maintenance cycles. The image below shows a theoretical representation of a sine wave that is represented by a mathematical function. The function of t equals the a sine of... Wait, what does ft stand for? Oh, ft is the frequency. I got it. Okay. So t is, f is the frequency, t is the time, and we have the phase. Okay. And it looks like we have some offset, so this is the time period. Got it. In practice, various programming languages package exist that fit an arbitrary data set to a curve. For example, Python has... Right. This seems like pretty standard math so far. We use Python to make the result more accurate. This is recommended to include arbitrary values. So this is actually something that you'll do in a machine learning. So if you look at machine learning, you'll do stuff to clean up the data as well, and to help make it fit into a graph. It's just data manipulation. There's a lot of reasons to do it that can make your data be bad. You think more data is good, but like if you're trying to process audio, a microphone's not perfect. It's going to pick up static. It's going to pick up stuff like that, and that's not really what you want to train on. So you want to reduce those types of things, or maybe there's a where the microphone peaks, and the microphone peaking can cause static and distortion and things like that. So anyways, there's a lot of stuff you do to clean up data. Or, they could have one of these things like this peak here could have been like way up here because they onboarded a large customer, which maybe you want to remove out of your data set because it's not really indicative of anything real. It's not a pattern that you can base it off of, which is what you're trying to do with fitting these curves. All right. I am going to say this. Let's make a YouTube video on understanding this because I think it's going to be good. I'm not going to pretend to sit here and understand this math right off the first, but I'll try. In practice, various programs. Okay. Amplitude. This is the distance between the peaks and the valley of the time axis. Yep. Frequency is the number of cycles in time periods. So that's just how often they peak in a certain amount of time. That's the frequency. So we are concerned with the daily CPU pattern, meaning that the guess should be one full wave every 24 hours. Okay, so their goal here is this is a day pattern. Okay, yeah, so you can see here, we can look at the peaks. This is at like 11. This is that peak, and this peak should be around 11. So they're trying to fit this curve to a day period cycle, which, yeah, it looks like it's fitting into that. Also, this is like the amount of CPUs they're using. So CPU percentage of the data center, I'm guessing. I actually think this is something we could glean from this that maybe somebody's not looking at. They look to run their data centers at 80% CPU. So they have about 20% for peaking or spiking of data. That's an interesting figure. I think for somebody that wants to run a data center, this is interesting information. It looks like they try to keep their data center. That gives you like where you're not wasting. At 60% CPU, you're wasting a lot of CPU that you've bought, that you've provisioned, that you own. And so these are also people that like are running a data center, which means you can't just go add another EC2 instance. You actually have to go buy more physical. You have to have a provider and you have to have room in your data center. And you've got like there's a lot that goes into this. So they're shooting for 80% is if this is a real window. That's cool information. For 12 hours, they are under 60%. Yeah. You can't, so something I do know about data centers here is you don't provision for here. You provision for here. And this sounds like a waste, and this is actually where spot usage comes in. So spot usage, when you're like a cloud provider and can sell your services, this is where spot usage really comes in to leverage this wasted infrastructure. The reason you have to provision for here is because you have to provision for handling the day's workload. If this hits over 100%, you're screwed. You actually can't handle the requests. And so you have to have everything, but you know that you're going to have this wasted. And that's where spot instances come in, and really make you money by saving you from wasting resources. Okay. Phase. This is the position of the no guesses needed for this. Offset. So basically they have an offset to fix the center. This is just centering out the sine wave to the data. You can kind of think of this, if you're thinking of like a standard wave or the line, the y equals mx plus b, you can kind of think of this as the plus b. This is bringing this up to where it is, because obviously if it was on the 50% line here, that would be an offset of 0. Right. I suppose you can't get the machines during the night, so all you could do is possibly you could power off machines. I think, and save money that way. Yep. Now, if you're running in a cloud, so this is a person that has their own data centers, but if you're running in a cloud, this is where you scale down, and you can have stuff to start to proactively scale down, and you can actually proactively start to scale up as well. So I think you could take this and still use it. Now, you don't have your own data centers. You don't have to worry about the 80%. You can push this scale much closer to maxing out your CPU. You don't want to max out. I would say 90% is comfy. 95% is very, very warm. It's very, very warm. I've done it where you're running on 95%, and you don't have much room for a spike and to be able to resolve it quickly and easily. 95% is very warm. Very warm. Right. Yep. Dutch is spot on. Hello, buddy. Let's not do it right now. Come on. Good boy. Sorry. All right. Applying the theory. With the theory understood, we implement. Okay, I don't know that I understood the theory. Oh wait, I skipped this. Timestamp equal. Okay, so they have a timestamp. CPU. They're making an array of their CPU. So they're guessing over a 24-hour period. I don't know where they're coming up with these numbers. I'm going to have to think on this before I come up with, like, how they came up with these numbers. You guys are not wrong. That cat only bothers me when he's hungry, and that's what he's telling me right now, that he's hungry. That's the only time he shows me love, is when he's hungry. All right. So I'm not going to sit here, and this would take me too long, but I'm going to, because we're going to make a YouTube video out of this, because I think this will be interesting to understand a little bit better. So, like, a couple things that stand out to me. Why did these come up with these numbers? Maybe they'll explain it in a little bit, but these numbers interest me. If it's from observed data, like they observed their data and came up with the best thing to fit it. Because this is coming up with the amplitude, and they basically have some magic numbers here to guess how big of a sine wave to give, the amplitude, how large it is. Like, I understand what they're doing here, but I don't understand why, I guess. The offset, they're just, for their offset, they're literally just taking the average. That's what their offset is. This line here is just the average. Well, just the mean, if you understand how averages work. It's just the mean. This is how far off of 50, up or down. Which means, on average, they're still running at more than 50% utilization. Oops, I skipped it. Okay. they're talking about a guess. They're talking about a guess, which I guess is their future prediction, which is taking the amplitude, multiplying 2 by pi times the frequency. So the 2 isn't a magic number here because this should have 2 peaks per day, a low peak and a high peak. The guess frequency is once a day, and their offset. So this is just taking this data here and trying to make a guess of when it's the middle value, the center peak of their offline time, which then you could say like their time window is plus or minus 1 hour from the peak. That's my guess here. Not a math expert. That's what it looks like to me. With the theory understood, I'm going to say lightly understood. With the theory concept, we implement this logic in our reboot system. To determine the window, the reboot system queries Prometheus for our data center CPU over a configurable period of time. This is actually really cool. As we work on the Null cloud, we will also have to do something like this. So this is something we should keep working on. If there is an accurate enough fit, the window is so this is actually a cool concept. If there's an accurate enough fit. So I'm guessing what they're meaning there is they do this math for this sine wave to fit the sine wave to the data. And if there isn't a good enough sine wave, there's not going to be enough fit. They're going to have like a state like 80%. If there's an 80% more fit over the last 2 days of time, then we're going to keep going with that. If there's been enough disruption and change, the algorithm can't compute what it is because there's too much variation. So that makes sense. They're just saying how accurate it's been over a time frame. That's cool. The window is cached in the console log with other metadata. Otherwise, the fallback logic is implemented. What's fallback logic? What is this magical fallback logic? For various, that's all they're going to say on it. For various reasons, some data centers might not have enough data for a fit at that moment. Like I said, large changes, a new big customer comes on, could skew it. There's a lot of things that, or a large customer changed their how their users interact with it, which made it happen. If a big an AI miner came online and started screwing with their load balancers and hitting a service at night, that could screw with that sine wave. I'm still interested in this fallback logic. What is this mythical fallback logic? Because previously you said there was no fallback logic. Somebody just decided. Or is that the fallback logic? For example, a data center which only has recently provisioned and hasn't served enough traffic yet. Okay, can I reboot? Has the main window been calculated? No. Query Prometheus and compute the window. Do I have a window? No. Implement fallback. There is no... All right. Fallback logic 3 a.m. That is a true senior engineer there. Our fallback logic is, I looked at the graph, 3 a.m. is the general time. All right. When a server requests to reboot, the system checks if the current time is within the maintenance window first, before running other pre-flight checks. In most cases, the window already exists because of the So basically, they're saying that a server checks to see if it can reboot before it reboots, but it only starts to reboot because something told it that it was the time to reboot. So most of the time, those coincide. But when it doesn't, due to a causal session expire or some other reason, it is computed using the CPU data in Prometheus. Considerations on this. Wait, 1 second. I misunderstood that. When a server requests to boot, the system checks if the current time is within the maintenance windows first before running other pre-flight checks. In most cases, the window already exists because of prefetch mechanism implemented. But when it doesn't, due to console session expiry or some other... I don't understand what they're saying here. Why would... I don't understand what they're saying. I'm wondering if this is something internal. So they're saying save to console. Like the console is a place where they store whether they have a window or not. That's what they put up here. But when it doesn't due to console session expiry or some other reason, I don't know why that's. They could have just said for some reason, because this is kind of confusing. I love Russell's fallback reason. All right. It is computed using the CPU data in Prometheus. All right. I'm moving on. My brain's text. All right. The considerations in this phase were caching. Calculation of the window should only be done over a pre-decided validity period. To achieve this, we store the information in a console KV. It's just a key value store along with a session lock that expires after the validity period. Oh, okay. So I guess this is like maybe effectively a threading issue. The thing was told to reboot during the time that it could. Inside of that, but like towards the end, and then basically after it does all the pre-flight checks and everything, it's already outside of the window, and it fails for that. I'm guessing that's what I'm understanding of this at this point. I am guessing if the calculation starts to mismatch, the console won't be updated, and so at some point the session won't be updated. I think you're right. All right. Along with a session lock that expires after the validity period, we also mentioned in the past that we use console as a service discovery and key value storage mechanism. All right. The one thing that I would think that they would also do here, you could have a random spike up here. You could have a random spike here. And I feel like you would implement some logic that expires that session, expires that cache, if it hits this green line, the average, the mean. So just to say, if for some reason the total CPU usage right now is spiking, even though we're in our maintenance window, maybe we want to stop. Maybe we don't want to reboot. I would implement that. I would. Especially because you don't know why your total CPU is spiking. Is it because other CPUs aren't coming back online? That could be the case. I don't know. Yeah, there are definitely things that could create insane spikes. 100%. Good boy. Just sit down. You'll be fine. All right, let's go on. Most load patterns fit into a sine wave, but there are some edge cases occasionally. A smaller data center that has a constant CPU. For those cases, we fall back mechanism. But okay, so how accurate is the fit? This is good. With accurate. All right, you just get down. Okay, or sit. Yeah, good boy. All right. Most load patterns fit into a sine wave, but there are some edge cases occasionally, i.e. smaller data centers that have a constant CPU. In those cases, we have fallback mechanisms. Again, they're not explaining what the fallback mechanism is, but it also got us thinking about how to determine the accuracy of each fit. With accuracy of each fit. We were talking about this where, like, if it wasn't accurate enough, they'd have to basically abort. With accuracy data, we can make much smarter decisions about accepting the automatic window, track regression, and unearthed data centers with unexpected patterns. The theoretical solution here is referenced to as a goodness of fit. Curve fitting in Python with curve fit describes curve fitting with and calculating the chi-squared value. The formula for a goodness of fit chi-squared test in the image below. All right, so basically it just is testing how far off each image. Linear regression has the same thing. This is like the same equation for a linear regression, just to test how accurate that line is. Okay, the different values are observed, expected, and uncertainty. So basically, what they're doing here is each point you take the observed, what you would expect based off of that line, and how far they are apart. Basically, the delta of it. The closer the chi-squared value is to the length of the sample, the better the fit is. The chi-squared value. This is a pretty standard. I do need to get going in a couple of minutes here. This cat is dying. He will start meowing. So I'm going to hurry up through the rest of this. The observed result of, prefetch my dinner. That's what he's asking for me to prefetch. Hence, we can provide a fit. Okay, so this is implemented in this simple formula. It should be a pretty simple. There should be, NumPy should have a pretty simple, this has been done a lot. So they take the observed minus the expected, and they just, okay. And so they then multiply it. Wait, why do they do the double multiply? Nope. I will go back through the math. I'm going to make a YouTube video on this. All right, a bad fit. These data centers do not exhibit a sinusoidal pattern, and the maintenance window can only be determined arbitrarily. This is a common in test data centers which do not handle customer traffic. In these cases, it makes sense to turn off load balancer. Okay, test data centers don't even make sense because you're just testing stuff. So I don't know that makes sense. But I do like the thing of like festival tickets, PS5 releases, new GFX releases, where there would be huge spikes in data that weren't normal. Machine learning training and things like that would screw up those windows and invalidate that session token. Skewed fit. These data centers exhibit sinusoidal traffic patterns but are a bit skewed with some smaller troughs within the wave signal. This actually happens in linear regression again because so linear regression, you're trying to find the lowest point. So if you start here and go right, you would find that this was the lowest point. But if you went left, you might be tricked into thinking this was the lowest point when in actuality, you needed to get over that hump. There's methods to do that. But yeah, these the troughs and hence the windows are still correct, but the accuracy fit is reduced. So their accuracy is lower. These are data centers with a very clear pattern and great fits. These are ideal scenarios and most fall in. This is great. I always find that whenever I do something like this, most are like this. Like I don't get great fits. We have some really bad outliers, and then like the majority are these skewed fits. But I'm glad that they have really, this is amazing. If this is their normal, first, again, we can see that it seems that they're targeting 80%. That's what they're comfortable with. We can handle a spike. And this is what I think people need to learn about reading blogs. There's data in them that you're not looking for. What does Cloudflare think is an appropriate amount to handle a spike in data, to handle a new customer? Seems like 80% is about it. Oh, is squared. That makes sense. Because they're trying to take the squared. So they're squaring it. 100% this makes more sense now. I didn't realize that in Python. I'm not a Python expert. I've said that before. We will continue to iterate on this, make it more accurate, and provide more ways to consume the information. We have a variety of maintenance. I'm going to send him an email. I want to talk more about it. I want to make sure that we understand the math better. At best, we can do this math in a YouTube video and go over the math. Because they said they wanted people to be able to do it themselves. And I think that this is cool, but I think that they had too many magic numbers here. Too many things that you'd have to look at this and you'd have to be like, well, what is 86,000? And sure, they put the 24 hours, which made it easier to fix the 86,000, but these things don't just pop out to you. And this makes more sense now that they're taking the squared, but also where does the 2 and the 5 come for the amplitude, and how did they get to those numbers? We really need to understand those things. This was a great article. Thanks for everybody who recommended it. I am looking forward to the principal engineer next week. Remind me that that's what we're doing next week, the principal engineer. I do not have the time. This cat's going to start eating my leg if we talked about vectors. But we will also talk about vectors in a live stream, and we'll also make some videos about it. You know what? Should we make the Null database a vector database? I wasn't going to, but should we do that? Should we? I might. I will think about that as that comes to being. Thanks, everyone. Have yourselves a fantastic week. I hope this helped cover the news for you. I hope that you found this fun and entertaining. And thanks for all your support. And I'll see you guys next time.